Hello everyone, today I want to talk about how I applied for Chinese International High School, and also I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chinese education curriculum and basically everything you need to know in order for you to study here in China. So I really hope that you enjoy this video because I'm really passionate about the subject, and I'm just sharing my experience because this has been something that I've struggled with and also I've dealt with a lot throughout the past year. The timestamps will be linked below this video. Now let's get started! So first of all, I want to talk about my background. I've been studying abroad ever since I was young. The school that I went to was an Ivy school, and even though the environment that I was in was not an English-speaking country, the school environment I was in basically forced us to speak English every single day. So technically you could say that I'm really a foreigner here in China. And to be honest, I was so unfamiliar with the Chinese culture to the point that I basically had to relearn everything about the Chinese culture in this past year. So a little bit of context, I moved back here in China at the start of 2024 because of some family issues, and throughout the past year I've been working on trying to get myself into an international high school here in China. I'm going to break down the schools that I can attend and how I finally chose the school that I decided to go to. And you guys will learn a lot about the Chinese curriculum in this video, so hope you enjoy watching this. Before I talk about my own process, I want to talk a little bit about the education system here in China. The Chinese education has two routes. You either go in public school or you go to private school. In the public school route, education is pretty much free from grade 1 all the way to grade 9. Junior school, or grades 1 to 6, is dependent on where you live. So if you live in a good neighborhood, you can attend a good public school. You do obviously have to pay for things like maintenance and food, but other than that, there's almost no cost to education. Then when you transition to middle school, which is from grade 7 to grade 9, you have to take an exam, and in order for the middle schools to select you, you have to pass a certain grade boundary. So the higher the score that you get, the more likely it is for a good middle school to select you. And those that don't want to take this path, yet still want to stay in the public system, can also do this thing called yaojiang, which is basically based on luck, and the schools can take you in if you select that school. But this route is very risky, and it's much better for you to attend the test. Because if you do get selected for the school, you have to go no matter what. But if you don't, you basically miss out the chance to apply to middle school, and you might have to retake the year. And then after you complete middle school, you attend this test called 中考. This is the test for entrance to high school. High school is 3 years from grade 10 to grade 12. And this is the only way in the public school route where you can have the possibility to learn from international curriculums. These classes are called 国际班, or international departments of public high school. These routes are aimed specifically for students who want to keep their student ID and their eligibility to apply for 高考, but still want the possibility to go abroad. So the things they learn in school would be from the international curriculum and not from the Chinese curriculum. But these again are still not the actual international schools. These public high schools can be private or public. If they're public and you're in the international sector, you only have to pay a little bit more for the curriculum. But if the school is private and you're still learning the Chinese curriculum, the cost is a lot higher. This is called 公办学校 and 民办学校. Then at the end of grade 12, you attend a test called 高考. This is probably the most aggravating and the hardest test for all Chinese students. This is the only time where you can select colleges. So with the score that you get from 高考, you can apply abroad because some universities do accept them. But most people would rather apply to public universities here in China, because obviously that's what they have learned in high school and that is their most comfortable language. If your scores meet a certain boundary, you can attend that school. A few weeks before the scores get released, you have to fill out a form called 志愿表, and this is where you choose the schools that you would like to go to. A really risky part of this is that if you choose a school that is higher, where their grade boundary is higher than the score that you get, and you don't have any backups or any safeties, then you may have to retake 高考 and do it again next year. Because the schools which are at your level may have already filled up with the people that decided to go to those schools. So this sums up the Chinese about the Chinese private education system, or the international education available to Chinese students here in China. Chinese international schools or bilingual schools are the only two options you can go for if you want international education as a Chinese national here in China. Of course, this is where many better off families choose to send their children abroad, because China is known for having one of the world's most expensive international education systems. You can choose to apply for the international curriculum at any time. For younger grades, the application is really a lot easier and it's mostly dependent on how wealthy your family is. But for older grades, especially for high school, there is quite a rigorous exam and application process that you have to go through. International schools are the most expensive, and these are schools that are actually specifically for foreigners or anyone with a foreign passport. They're called 外子女学校. Often celebrities, diplomats, and students of international teachers attend school there. I'm going to focus on bilingual schools in this video because this is a part that I have the most knowledge about, and that's the school that I have applied to. Bilingual schools are called 双语学校. These schools are open for all nationalities, and a lot of them can be placed on a scale of how close they are to the Chinese public school system. There are some bilingual schools which honestly feel the same as public schools, just having their final exam being in English. But there are other bilingual schools which are part of global school organizations, and they are a lot more international. These schools can be separated off into tiers. They are mostly ranked by where their graduates go off to and how well their scores are. They each follow different curriculum. The most popular ones are IB, AP, and A-level, but there are also smaller varieties, such as the curriculum of Hong Kong, Singapore, Canada, Australia. Most of the times the schools who follow the smaller varieties have students specifically dedicated to going to those countries. Tier 1 schools, or the best bilingual schools, almost all follow the big 3 curriculum. Pretty much once you choose to change to international curriculum, you would apply for international education abroad. So most students coming from these families want to go to university abroad. And this also automatically means that you're giving up your chance to attend a university here in China, because all Chinese nationals are required to have taken Gaokao in order to get into any university here in China. But there is an exception. There are some schools which allow you to obtain an international diploma, but also maintaining your spot in the Gaokao exam. So if your Chinese is up to that level, and you have enough knowledge to take the Gaokao, then there are still some schools that allow you to return back to that path. However, most students don't take this path, because obviously Gaokao is very different from the international curriculum that they're learning. So if anyone returns back to Gaokao, or the Chinese national route, you basically wasted all your education before, because the exam will not be aligned with the information that you have learned. And also most of the times these exams happen at the same time, all around May to June, so it's pretty much impossible for you to prepare for both at the same time. Now I want to talk about the top 3 international curriculum. Number 1 is IB. IB is known as the most rigorous and the most difficult of the 3 curriculum. The reason for that is because IB requires you to be a more well-rounded person. You have to take 6 subjects on top of doing research that is at college level and writing essays regarding philosophy and theories. But moreover, they require you to do service, sports, and creativity outside of just that. It's a 2-year program, and you take your final exam at the end of May of your final year. This is the most highly recognized diploma around the world, and you can go to almost any country with this diploma. Number 2 is AP. AP is advanced placement, and it's the American curriculum. AP can do 3 to 4 years, and you will get an American high school degree, and with the additional AP credit classes that you can take, you can skip certain college classes because they're at the same level. APs are at the level of college classes, so they're a lot harder than regular high school classes. And you can start taking APs at really any time that you want, as long as you're able to pass the final exam. So I've seen that some people as young as grade 6 or grade 7 have taken them, but if you don't score a passing grade of 3 or a good score of 4 or 5, there's really no point of you having taken that exam. AP is honestly only recognized in the US, and the diploma that you get is an American high school diploma, so the students who choose to take this curriculum have basically set their minds on going to the US. Number 3, A-level. A-level is the British curriculum. It is a 2-year course, but a lot of schools use the first year of grade 10 as a foundation course of IGCSE. IGCSE is really the same level as IB/MYP, which is basically the end of middle school, and also at the same level as 中考 in Chinese. But of course, there are slight changes to the material that you would learn, and this is why you cannot crisscross from different curriculum, because you may end up doing a test that is completely different from what you have learned. A-level is only required to take 3 to 4 subjects, and you can choose in whatever division you want. So it means that if you don't really like STEM, you can actually focus more on social studies or the arts, and you don't have to take everything. A-level is recognized globally, but it is mainly for British colonized countries, or obviously the best choice, the UK. Similar to AP, this is more dedicated for students who have already determined and have set their minds on applying for UK universities. Now, there is a possibility to mix curriculum. That is, some people who actually take the IB sometimes may have taken IGCSE as their foundation year, and they may have also taken other APs to add on to their credits. AP and IGCSE is a lot easier to self-study than the full-on IB diploma. So others who maybe are doing the APs or the A-level, but they may just not be able to get the full diploma because they haven't taken the entire course. The IB diploma requires you to do extended essay, TOK, and CAS, which are not possible for you to do by yourself. So this is why you can self-study A-levels and AP, but you cannot self-study the IB diploma. And finally, referring this back to the Chinese education system or the Chinese bilingual education system, there's a difference called 体制内 and 体制外. 体制内 are basically describing those students who have been in the Chinese public curriculum almost all their lives, but they may have decided to transfer to the international curriculum last minute during their high school period. So most of their mindset and the way that they have studied is based on the mainland Chinese curriculum. This means that often they're much better in STEM and obviously the Chinese language than English or social studies. So most Chinese nationals who are coming from Tijuana prefer to go for A-levels because it's a lot easier and you can choose subjects that are much more mathematics focused. Dwight are students who have been studying an international curriculum almost all their life. So this means that they have either been at a bilingual system pretty much since they were young, or maybe in cases like myself, they're returning from abroad. Students like myself and people who are similar to me might be more balanced and they may not have a peak in, for example, mathematics or the STEM area. So in China, if you take the IB, it's considered a much harder curriculum because it's more difficult for Chinese Tijuana students. But actually for students like myself, it's easier to do the IB than it is for me to do the A-levels because I don't really have a strong peak in mathematics or STEM subjects. And I also do a lot more service work or community work, and I'm not so intensely focused on the academics. So this is why the IB is suitable for some, but also very not suitable for others. I will analyze more at the end about which schools actually fit with me and how I ended up choosing the school that I decided to go to. Now let's talk about how the Chinese bilingual high schools are categorized. They're ranked in tiers. The best high schools are in Shanghai and Beijing, China. They're known as Tier 1 schools. Like I said earlier, Tier 1 schools mostly follow the top 3 curriculum, and most of them have astounding results with basically yearly graduates attending Ivies in Oxbridge, or maybe top 30 schools all around the world. Actually, oddly enough, the international branches of public high schools score the best, even better than fully international schools in China. So you can see a significant difference in the way that these international sectors are taught. They have the mindset of the Chinese public school education system, and they're very, very academic based, but they're following the international curriculum. So they do very, very well with regards to academics. Most of these students grew up attending competition after competition and have a million extracurricular outside of their main subjects. They're known as the elite class, and this is where Neijun comes in. Neijun is when you compare yourself to others and you keep on trying to be better than others, and everyone else keep on doing the exact same thing, so the competition just carries on forever. So this is why it's so easy for one person to score really high on a test and then quickly get replaced by another person, and the mere difference may just be literally decimal points. All of these schools have more than one curriculum, but almost all of them are most known for one of their curriculum, and that is like their most adapted curriculum system. So they may have the best teacher or the most experience in this sector. This is sort of the same thing as why people choose to go to Stanford for business school instead of Harvard for business school. So similarly, there's an international high school called Wellington, and it's known for their A-levels because they have the best teachers there. So you would see a lot fewer students going to Wellington for IB, even though actually Wellington's IB scores are also very, very high. Almost all of these schools require you to be part of their boarding system, and this is where parents ask about how closely watched their kids are, and you can tell if it's more of a public school management system where basically the teachers are in control of everything. So this is sort of the idea where the outer shell looks like it's an international school, but the core values and principles are still the Chinese education system principles. Now here is the latest ranking of all of the international schools here in China. As you can see, there is a different ranking for the international schools and the bilingual schools, and if you mix them up together, there are actually a slight difference, and there's actually sort of an overlap between them. So now I want to talk about my application process and how I actually chose the school. So the first thing I looked at was the curriculum, because obviously I came from an IB background and I wanted to continue that education system. Because like I said earlier, I think IB fits me the most because I'm not someone who has a really strong peak in a certain academic area, but I'm someone who is a lot more well-rounded and I do a lot of community work, and I think that really fits with the IB principles. And actually the only reason why I am so well-rounded is because I grew up in an IB system, and so I was born to doing all those different community services and all those community work outside of school. I was surrounded by these values ever since I was young, and so that was a really key principle for me. I think that was something I really took into consideration when I chose the schools I wanted to apply to. Now, number 2 was that I wanted the school to be very international. So this is why I chose some of the schools that were part of larger organizations. Bilingual schools open to Chinese nationals that are also part of larger organizations has a very limited number. The most popular 3 is UWC, Dwight School, and WLSA. UWC and Dwight School are all IB, and WLSA is more heavily towards AP. Another school that is almost really similar and basically considered an international school at this point is YK Bao. This school is not affiliated with any global education systems, but it's honestly as international as Harrow and Wellington. Number 3, I looked at boarding. So like I said earlier, the only reason why I was applying was because of some family situations that really forced me to go to a school here in China. And so I couldn't be accompanied by anyone when I attend high school. And so this is why boarding was very important, because obviously I need a place to live in a city that's not my hometown. And most of the schools I was looking at was outside of the hometown that I lived in China. Number 4, I did consider its ranking. I know it's bad to look at the tiers and how well it ranks, but I do feel like it's important to have a well-ranked school. Not necessarily for the reputation, but because of the different affiliations you can get associated to. So for example, some of the better international schools are part of large organizations that allow you to connect with other international schools all around the world or all around China. And so basically it means that you can attend more community activities and you can just meet more people as a whole. And of course they have a lot more academic opportunity that students can attend, and it's just really a better boost for your college applications. And number 5, I did look at the cost. So bilingual schools are a little bit cheaper than international schools, but as a whole they can be ranked in the world as some of the most expensive international schools. So here's a full list of all of the costs of the international schools ranked. If you compare the most expensive with the least expensive, some of them actually can double each other or triple each other even. And of course, lastly, I did look at how well I was able to communicate with the teachers. So I don't think I said this earlier, but the entrance exam that you have to do in order to get into these high schools, a lot of times they show you the type of environment that you'll be surrounded with. If this exam is a lot more math based or a lot more Chinese on it or has a lot more Chinese writing on it, it's more likely that the school is more lenient towards the Chinese standard education system. So it might just, the international curriculum might just be the outer shell. And I also looked at its interview process. If in the interview process it required a lot of parent participation, it meant that it was obviously a lot more closer to the Chinese national guidelines where the parent should be in charge of the student's education. And so these were the schools that I completely wiped out at first. I was like, I did not want to go to these schools if they're so heavily Chinese focused. So that was my elimination process to end up with the schools that I ended up choosing to apply to. So these are the schools that I ended up choosing to apply to. And these schools are the schools that I thought were the most fitting to me. Later, I did attend this test, which was sort of more Chinese based, and it opened doors for me to the Chinese schools that I was not really interested in them, but I just took them because I was worried that I would not get into my first choices. Finally, let's talk about the application process. Step 1 is that almost all of the schools require you to fill out an online application form. If, of course, the school is more international, they would ask to see your previous report cards, a CV that you have written, and extracurricular or honors and awards that you have won. Some schools even require teacher recommendation, but this is very rare. Number 2 is that if your application materials pass the first screening, you can attend their exam. They have 2 tests. Most of the times it's 1 English and 1 maths. But there are exceptions where actually some schools even ask you to do a Chinese test, or some schools don't have an English test. But again, this goes to show that which schools are a lot more Chinese-based and which schools are a lot more international. Step 3 is that if you pass the written exam, you can attend the interview. In the interview, most of the schools require to interview the student as well as a parent. But like I said, I chose the schools that were more student-based and having their full attention focusing on the student. So actually, I attended all of the interviews by myself, and it was only the school that I actually finally decided to go to where the parent was actually required to go with me. And that was really just to sign the papers and to fill out some financial information. So if you pass the interview, you just have to wait a couple of weeks before they give you the final results. Now let's talk about the timeline. So actually, the application season can happen anytime in the school year. Schools that are more international, like UWC and YK Bao, start the application process in October of the previous year and end their application process in around March. But most of the other schools have more open days or test-taking days throughout the rest of the year all the way to the end of July. The school year starts at around the end of August to beginning of September, and they have almost monthly tests. So of course, if the school is not ranked as high and there are not as many students attending that school, they may have more tests. But most of the times, Tier 1 and Tier 2 schools have limited seats. There is a cost to attend all of these tests, and it varies from school to school. Finally, if you don't want to apply through this method, or maybe you have accidentally missed a date, there are these things called 联校考试, where basically you take 2 tests, and if you meet a certain grade boundary on the test, then schools participating as part of this exam can select you. So this style is really similar to the 中考 or 高考 style, where the schools can select the students just based off of 1 exam. Because before you even take the test, you don't need to fill out any documents, and it's only after that you can get invited to interviews. Okay, now I'm going to talk about myself. So I officially started preparing in around April of 2024, and I attended these tests around May to June of 2024. I was able to get accepted to all of them, and I was able to pass all of these schools. You can see my scores on the screen. And I was able to attend all of these interviews, which I also passed, and I was able to get offers from all of these schools. I think that a lot of these schools liked me because I was coming from a very unique background. Obviously, most of the students that they got were students coming from mainland China or students that have been in bilingual schools but were also part of mainland China. And so as myself, who is coming back from abroad, it's a very unique style to their school, and it's a very nice addition because I was actually viewed as a foreigner and I wasn't viewed as a Chinese national, even though I obviously have a Chinese nationality. If you are Chinese, or if you also want to apply to these schools, then you can check out my Chinese account where I have actually gone in depth into how I applied for each of these schools. Regarding my preparation, I only prepared primarily for maths because obviously my English is my fluent mother tongue, so I didn't really need to prepare for that, but I did need to submit 2 standardized test scores, so I did have to prepare for IELTS and the Duolingo English test. I also go in depth on how I attended those tests on this YouTube channel. For maths, I did work with a tutor outside, and this was part of an education organization. So because of my unique family situation, I was not able to go to school for half a year, and so because of that, actually doing the maths actually helped me pick up some of the knowledge that I forgot. So I wouldn't say that the math furthered me necessarily in my whole curriculum, but it did help me pick up a lot of the knowledge that I would have forgotten had I not taken the course. So this primarily helped me with the math exams, and also with understanding the Chinese language, because some of the tests I took, they had a lot of Chinese written on them. They had Chinese questions instead of English questions. So I hope that was helpful for anyone who is thinking of or in the process of applying to Chinese high schools here in China. Or maybe if you're just watching this for fun, I hope that gave you some useful information. I had a lot of fun making this video because I'm very, very passionate about the subject. I hope that anyone who is struggling on their education journey, please do reach out because there's so much help out there, and anyone can provide you any advice in like any sort of way. So just don't be shy and always believe light is coming, or there's something good is always coming, and just you have to wait. Sometimes I think that at the very beginning of the application process, I was very heartbroken. I was very confused and I didn't really have any help, and I didn't really have a lot of help from adults. So I was really just scouring through all of this by myself. But then I found, the world of internet and basically you guys out there, and I just felt a lot of hope, and I was very, very excited. And I feel like miracles do come. So don't give up, and I know that you'll get into your dream school. Always stay in education because you need education for everything in life. Stay in school, guys. Bye.